Okay, so now we're doing problem number 12 again, but in this case we're going to be doing it using the guess and check method. So we're factoring this quadratic first by moving everything over to one side, just like we did before. So we get 9a squared minus 24a minus 105 is equal to 0. And then the next thing you always want to do is look for a GCF. So here I see that 3 is my GCF, okay? 3 is in common here, which means that I'm going to take a 3 out, and I'm going to rewrite this as 3a squared minus 8a minus 35, and that's equal to 0. So now factoring by guess and check means that I'm just going to take this trinomial and I'm going to set it up as two binomials. And if we look at the different terms, we know that this first term is, you get it by multiplying this term here and this term here together. So the first two terms, when I'm multiplying these things out, are going to equal 3a squared. So the only way that we can get 3a squared when we look at this term and this term is going to be by putting a 3a and an a here. Okay, so next we want to look at the last term, because the last term, the c term that I'm factoring, you're going to multiply to that by looking at the two terms here and here. So let me change colors. So this term here, this c term, you get it by multiplying the last two terms in your binomials together. Okay, so that's kind of a little more challenging to figure out, because if we look at negative 35, we can get that a few different ways. So we can have 35 and 1, it could be plus or minus and plus or minus. Notice that to get negative 35, one's going to have to be plus and one's going to have to be minus. We can also use plus or minus 7 with plus or minus 5. So 7 times 5 gives you 35. So those were our options. And we're going to be guessing to try and figure out what goes where. Okay, so first of all, I also have to look at the fact that these two terms multiplied together and these two terms multiplied together are going to give me this term here, this negative 8a, when I add them together. I multiply the inside and the outside, and I get that middle term. Okay, so now what you want to do is just guess some numbers. So let's try 7 and 5, because the difference between the numbers here is only going to be negative 8a. So if we use 35, that's going to give us a huge number. And probably 8a is going to be a little too small for that. So let's try 7 and 5. I know one has to be negative and one has to be positive. And I know that the 3a is going to be multiplied by this term here. So let's just try, let's put a 5 here and a 7 here, just for fun. Okay, so here if we put a 5 in this place and a 7 in this place, and let's just, put, let's do negative here and positive here. So when we multiply that out, we get negative 7a and positive 15a. So when I add those two things together, I'm going to get positive 8a. So it seems like we're almost there. We're really close. Instead of having negative here and a positive here, let me change the signs. So let's try having positive 7 and negative 5. So now when I multiply 7 times a, I get 7a. And when I multiply 3a times negative 5, I get negative 15a. When I add these two things together, it's going to give me negative 8a, which is exactly what I wanted to add up to. So my final answer is going to be 3 times 3a plus 7 times a minus 5 is equal to 0. And now, basically, I just took a really big, complicated quadratic equation and I separated it out into smaller, kind of mini equations. Now, using the zero product property, I can set this equal to 0, this term, this binomial here, and this binomial equal to 0. So it's two smaller equations that are much easier to solve. So 3a plus 7 is equal to 0. 3a is equal to negative 7. So a is equal to negative 7/3. That's one answer. Notice that the 3 on the outside isn't going to help me much because this is a term, 3, but 3 is never going to equal 0. So that we can kind of disregard in this case. And then we're going to have a minus 5, that's another smaller equation that I got, is equal to 0, so a is equal to 5. And because this isn't a triangle or it's not a distance or anything like some of our problems in geometry, the negative and the positive are both going to work here. And we're done.